8 spine-chilling Christmas horror stories revealed. Terrifying secrets that haunt your sleep. Emily's heart raced as she turned onto the dirt road, the snow crunching under her tires while her 2 kids sat silently in the back seat, their breaths fogging the windows. The light from the street lamps flickered like a haunting echo of laughter, memories of Christmases past lingering as shadows in her mind. A chill crept up her spine as she glanced down at her buzzing phone. Yet another anonymous text. "He's watching you." Dismissive of the text at first, she shook off the fear clouding her thoughts, telling herself it was just some sick joke. Community pranks were nothing new in small towns like hers. But as she drove further into the cold embrace of the night, trepidation clawed at her heart. The festive lights that adorned the neighboring houses began to fade into the darkness, merging with the shadows that lurked between the trees. She couldn't ignore the dread pooling in her stomach, brewing with each mile. The holiday season loomed large, casting a daunting shadow over each flickering bulb in the distance. "We're almost there," she reassured her children, though her voice trembled slightly, betraying her calm façade. Arriving at her relative's home, the warmth and laughter enveloped her like a soft blanket, but the comfort was short-lived. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Ornaments would vanish from sight, lights would flicker erratically, and a feeling of being watched prickled at her skin. Every laugh over hot cocoa felt more distant than the last, the cacophony of merriment dulling against the rising drum of her anxious heart. Was it the stress of the season? "Mom! Where's Ben?" Lily's voice pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. Panic flooded through Emily as she realized her son was nowhere to be found. He was just playing hide-and-seek. She bolted towards the door, the laughter behind her dissolving into a muffled blur, her mind racing. "Ben!" She called out into the frigid night, her voice echoing almost mockingly back to her amidst the chilling silence. Outside, the yard was cloaked in a thick fog of despair. The once lively lights that adorned the trees appeared as sinister specters, twinkling mischievously with the shadows dancing in the corner of her eye. "Ben!" She shouted again, fear tightening its grip around her throat. And then it came softly at first, a whisper floating through the crisp air. "Mommy, I'm here." The voice, so sweet yet haunting, melted her insides but frayed her nerves. It resonated from the shadows, twisting through the thin air like smoke. With dread knotting in her stomach, she stepped forward, but terror etched itself into her every move. Brushing against the cold fence, she noticed a tall figure slip between the trees. Just a fleeting flash in the darkness, but powerful enough to stop her heart. Who was watching her children? The festive spirits of Christmas suddenly morphed into something dark, hiding in every crevice of the neighbor's yard. As a grotesque feeling crept underneath her skin, something deep within her urged her to search beyond the holiday cheer. She stumbled upon an old trunk in the corner of the porch, dust swirling as she pried it open. Inside, old photographs stared back, a haunting gallery of sinister eyes and smirks twisted into each frame. Beneath the photographs lay newspaper clippings revealing dark secrets of the seemingly perfect neighborhood, stories that chilled her blood and whispered of hidden horrors lurking just beneath the cheerful façade. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her hands trembled as she sifted through the content, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The more she uncovered, the more palpable the fear became. It was as if the neighborhood held secrets that could tear her family apart. With each second, the merriment in the house felt like a sick joke, and a familiar voice beckoned her deeper into the unknown. "Mommy, I'm here." The sound tugged insistently at her core, luring her into the ominous shadows. What had she truly set in motion this Christmas? Emily's breath caught in her throat as she edged closer to the trunk. The whispers of the party inside faded, sucked into the void behind her. A sense of desperation pushed her to sift through the photographs again, each snapshot more unsettling than the last. The faces stared back, some ghostly pale, others with grins stretched too wide, too insane. Each pair of eyes seemed to follow her, digging into her soul. "Mommy, I'm here." Ben's voice floated just out of reach, intertwined with the fog that curled around the yard. It echoed against her terrified heart, urging her to respond but laced with an undeniable chill. Could it really be him? Or was it another cruel game? "Ben!" she shouted, tears stinging her eyes. Silence answered, thick with menace. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to move away from the trunk. Each step deeper into the darkness felt like trudging through treacle. The laughter behind her intensified, clashing with the dread pooling in her gut. She could hear glasses clinking, children shouting in joy, all while her own son was lost somewhere in the night. As she turned her gaze back to the trees, a shadow skittered once more. A figure, tall and gaunt, flickered just at the periphery of her vision. Panic surged through her veins. "Ben!" she cried, her voice cracking, desperation clawing at her throat like an unseen predator. "Over here, Mommy!" the voice called again, softer this time, almost a plea, wrapped in a tone that made her blood run cold. It didn't sound like her son. But it lured her, drawing her closer to the gnarled trees, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for her. With each step, frost crunched beneath her boots, as if the ground itself tried to warn her. The swirling fog thickened, obscuring the familiar path leading back to the house. Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of her child, fighting against the disorienting grip of fear. She felt the walls of the night press in on her, suffocating her hope. A rustle echoed nearby. Heart hammering, she swung around, scanning every shadow. "Ben! Please!" The words barely broke through the thin veil of dread pinning her down. Suddenly, a glimmer caught her eye, a flash of red beneath the snow. Crouching down, she reached for it, her breath hitching as her fingers wrapped around soft, cold fabric. It was Ben's jacket, his favorite. Questions danced into her mind, spiraling into panic. Had he lost it while playing? Had he been taken? "Mommy!" The voice, still echoing, now seemed to come from behind a thick grove of trees. She hesitated, every fiber of her being screaming to run back to safety. But the sound tugged at the very essence of her motherhood. With one last glance at the trunk, she dashed toward the grove, the world around her darkening. Each heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowned by the oppressive chill. "Mummy!" It came again, closer, more insistent. And then she saw him, a figure standing between the trees, just beyond the reach of light. Ben, or was he? The child's shape was too still, too rigid. Wisps of fog curled around him, framing his figure almost eerily. Ben? Panic surged through her as time stretched. Was that her son, or an illusion woven to trap her? She reached out, desperation igniting her courage. "Mommy, come!" His voice dripped sweetness laced with something dark. A sickening certainty settled in. This was no ordinary chase. The night had teeth, and it was hungry for her to step closer. Before she could process her growing dread, the figure turned. A face flashed in the dark, a face wearing Ben's features but twisted into something grotesque and wrong. A shock ran through her, paralyzing her very breath. In muted horror, she realized, what have I set in motion? In that moment of clarity, a scream rose to her lips, but nothing escaped. The woods swallowed her voice, shushing her desperation. The laughter from the house faded to nothing, lost in the chilling embrace of the terrors lurking in the night. And just before the shadows closed in, she felt something latch onto her ankle, a freezing grip pulling her into the darkness. What was waiting for her in the depths of the grove as the unseen figures drew closer? The icy grip yanked Emily back, throwing her off balance. She stumbled, barely catching herself as the fog swirled, thick and suffocating. Panic clawed at her as she glanced down at the dark fingers wrapping around her ankle. They looked almost human but felt wrong, cold, and lifeless. "Mommy!" The boy's voice cooed again, wrapping around her mind like a serpent. But it was not Ben. It couldn't be. The horror solidified in her heart. Anguish surged through her, fighting against the terror creeping up her spine. She had to escape. With every ounce of strength, she kicked at the icy hold, breaking free for just a moment. She sprinted into the thickening fog, heart pounding so hard it threatened to burst. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, flitting like moths around a flame. "Mommy!" The voice came again, closer this time, but it was not just her son now. A chorus of whispers surrounded her, rising and falling like a haunting lullaby. Each step echoed in her ears, frantic and unsteady. She glanced back, but the darkness swallowed her view. "No! Not again!" she screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. Then, a low, throaty laugh curled through the night air. It was haunting, sadistic, a mockery of joy. She veered to the right, attempting to distance herself from the sound, but her path twisted, everything around her shifting like her own mind. Was she losing her grip on reality? Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye. Blinking through the fog, she squinted, desperate for clarity. Was it a figure? A child? Or something worse? "Ben! Please! Where are you?" she cried out, her throat raw. No answer came, just a deep, ominous silence, a chasm filled with unspoken horrors. She could feel it, the laughter of her friends, celebrating inside the warmth of their home, just beyond the trees. But she was alone now, truly alone. The chill surged, wrapping itself around her like a blanket of despair. Shadows loomed larger, and she could feel their eyes on her, dark glittering pupils lurking just beyond her reach. They were drawn to her fear, relishing every tremor that coursed through her. "Mommy!" The voice was now a sing-song taunt, growing shriller. Her breath hitched. Frantically, she scanned the area, trying to find Ben's small figure, the warmth of his embrace, but was met only with ghostly silhouettes. Where was he? Then, without warning, a figure emerged from the fog, wielding a jagged stick that glinted in the moonlight. Its face was obscured by shadow, yet two piercing eyes glowed with malicious intent. Emily's heart dropped. "What do you want?" she screamed, dread spilling into her voice. The figure stepped closer, revealing a twisted semblance of her son's face, features morphed and sickeningly wrong. "You shouldn't have called me here, Mommy," it rasped, the voice a horrific imitation. "Now you must play." "No! You're not my Ben!" she shouted, but her voice trembled, double-checking her conviction. The reality of her situation crashed down on her. Every instinct screamed for her to run, to escape this nightmarish parody before her. Yet the little figure beckoned, forcing her to draw nearer. "Come play with me, you have to, or it'll hurt." Emily took an involuntary step back, her resolve shattering. This was beyond a game. It was a trap stringing her into its web. The laughter swelled again, echoing throughout the grove. A chorus of dark voices joined in, a cacophony of twisted children's giggles that chilled her to her core. "What have I done?" she whispered, a horrific realization dawning. She had unknowingly invited something sinister into her life. As desperation clawed at her heart, she turned to flee, but the shadows tightened around her, closing in. Something was pulling her back, tugging at her wrists, her ankles. It was the night itself, hungry for her fear. As she fought against the darkness, the final cold whisper ghosted through the air, sweet and sinister, "Join us." And just as she felt her last hope slip away, the world darkened, wholly pricking her senses, drowning her in fear. What awaited her on the other side of that darkness? Would she ever escape the clutches of what she had unleashed? A suffocating blackness enveloped Emily, holding her tight like a vice. Each breath was more difficult than the last, the frigid air sharp against her lungs. Whatever waited in the inky void felt sentient, as if it could sense her panic, her dread. Every instinct screamed for her to fight back, yet she felt utterly powerless. Suddenly, light flickered at the edges of her vision, a faint glow penetrating the darkness. She focused on it, willing herself to stumble toward that beacon. With one shaky step after another, she navigated through the gloom, guided by that small spark in the endless night. But with each step, the whispers piled up around her, chiming in harmony, a melody sown from fear and grief. "Play with us, Mommy," they chanted, over and over, their voices distorting into a grotesque lullaby. And then, the laughter erupted again, a thousand tiny, giggling voices piercing her eardrums. She broke into a run, ignoring the gnawing pain in her legs. Just ahead, the light pooled wider, shimmering like a mirage, beckoning her. It felt warmer, inviting a false promise now tainted with suspicion. "Ben!" she screamed. "Help me!" Her own voice echoed back, ridiculing her as it morphed into their laughter. "Help me, Mommy! Help me!" It was chilling. The darkness seemed to choke her, stealing her cries, reducing them to meaningless echoes. She darted toward the light, finally breaking free of the cold grip that had ensnared her. The fog swirled like a living thing, wrapping around her legs as if trying to pull her back in. When she burst into the clearing, Emily stumbled to a stop. Around her, the landscape appeared unreal, a twisted version of the forest she once knew. The trees stood too tall, their trunks warped and gnarled, looming like silent sentinels of despair. The ground pulsed beneath her feet, a sickly rhythm that matched the thunder of her heart. And then, she saw them. A mass of shadowy children, their eyes glowing unnaturally bright in the dark, grinned at her with elongated mouths, teeth sharp and too many. They danced in spirals, weaving in and out of the mist like a malevolent ballet. Among them, a silhouette stood still, twisted, dark features and a familiar face marred by something unspeakable. "Mommy! You came to play!" it called, and Emily's heart sank. It was not Ben. Not anymore. "Leave him alone!" she shouted, tears streaming down her face. A sudden bolt of anger surged through her, momentarily pierces the haze of despair. "Play! Play with us!" They shrieked in unison, their small, frail figures tumbling toward her in an avalanche. She felt the ground beneath her tremble, a pulsing, hungry entity that wanted her to join the twisted game. "Stop!" Emily cried, yet her voice couldn't slice through the racket. It felt like a nightmare without an end. They surged forward, their bodies merging together in a dark tide that swallowed everything in its path. In that moment, she wanted to drown out the madness, to close her eyes and wish it away. But she couldn't surrender. She had to fight, to protect every part of her being, to resist the pull of their cruel game. "Not today! I won't let you take me!" With renewed strength, she broke from the spinning shapes, sprinting past grasping hands. Breathless, she ran into the deeper woods, knowing she could not stop. Yet the laughter chased her. It echoed in her ears, taunting and relentless. Then out of the fog, a figure emerged, blocking her path. She barely had time to register its presence, eyes, as cold as the grip she had felt before, boring into her soul. "You can't escape, Mommy," it whispered, every syllable heavy with cold delight. Just as she skidded to a halt, the ground beneath her feet began to crack, fissures opening wide, swallowing her hope whole. The screams of distorted laughter surged, shaking the silence around her. Would this draw her back into the shadows, into the plane no mother should ever endure? Or could she break free once and for all? With one last spurt of desperation, Emily propelled herself toward the darkened figure, heart pounding, uncertainty flooding through her. Would this be her end, or would she plunge into an unknown that held the promise of salvation? The darkness consumed Emily whole, swallowing her hopes as she lunged toward that menacing figure. She felt the ground shatter beneath her, splintering like glass, and in that fleeting second of terror, time slowed. Each heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the laughter and the whispers. "No!" she screamed, a raw plea torn from her throat. Her body collided with the shadow, the impact jolting through her as she fell. She braced for pain, fully expecting to be pulled into the void. Instead, the world fell silent. A frozen stillness enveloped her, cold and heavy. Emily opened her eyes. The figure loomed overhead, but now it appeared muted, its edges fading into mist. For an instant, fear transformed into confusion. "What do you want?" she croaked out, her voice trembling. The figure's grin stretched unnaturally wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "To play, Mommy? Forever." The words hung in the air like smoke, a sinister invitation. With a surge of adrenaline, Emily sprang back to her feet. The darkness swirled around her, the laughter hushed but still lurking just beneath the surface. Each step felt precarious, the ground unfurling beneath her like a carpet that wanted to ensnare her once more. "Ben!" she shouted into the void. Desperation clawed at her throat as the shadows shifted, twisting into shapes that tormented her memories. The ghostly children flickered through the mist, their eyes glinting like daggers. They pounced, wild and eager, but for a split second, the image of Ben flickered among them, a fleeting visage of innocence amid chaos. "I'm coming!" she cried, lunging toward his silhouette, but the children closed in, blocking her path with their dark limbs. "No more games! Let him go!" The cacophony rose again, a swirling maelstrom of anguished cries and fitful laughter. "Join us!" they sang. The sound was dizzying, a call to madness that threatened to engulf her. A flicker of determination burned bright within her. "I want to play with you!" She steadied herself, pushing against the encroaching darkness. Her eyes locked onto the hazy semblance of Ben. In that moment, walls of shadow collapsed inward, forcing her to the ground. She could feel the cool fingers creeping up her body, seeking to drag her under. Emily felt her heart race. "Ben!" she screamed again, each syllable filled with raw desperation. But this time, she didn't just shout. She reached deep inside herself, summoning every ounce of love, fear, and determination. In her mind's eye, she focused on her son's laughter, the warmth of his hugs, the sparkle in his eyes when he felt joy. "I want to let you take him." Power surged through her like a tidal wave. With fierce will, she shoved against the dark tide, forcing it back with the intensity of her emotions. The shadows recoiled, as if her memories were sunlight, burning away the obscurity. In that brief reprieve, Emily sensed a shift, a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. But then, the figure loomed closer, almost merging with the now retreating darkness. "You think you're strong, Mommy?" It hissed, voice filled with a twisted delight. "When everything you fear is always right here." The ground trembled and cracked once more, sending ripples of panic coursing through her veins. She staggered, trying to keep her balance. A sense of foreboding crept back in, swirling around her like frigid mist. "Not more games," she whispered to herself, clenching her fists. Realizing she needed to act, Emily turned, sprinting deeper into the forest, breath ragged and burning. She didn't know where it led, but wherever it was, it had to be better than being consumed by them. Just as she dove into the thick underbrush, a bone-chilling scream echoed behind her, cutting through the shadows like a knife. "Mommy! Come back!" It was Ben's voice, but not a plea, it was a demand, laced with the twisted joy of the shadows. She faltered, heart-wrenching in her chest. Was she too late? Could she break free from this nightmare? Suddenly, the air exploded with a crack of thunder, and the laughter rose again. It resonated through the trees, singing a chilling lullaby. "You can't run from us, Mommy." The forest began to change around her. Trees twisted into monstrous shapes, roots snaking around her ankles. Emily stumbled, panic clawing at her throat. She had to find Ben before it was truly too late. But lurking just beyond the reach of her vision, she felt a darkness gathering. The laughter had shifted to sinister tones, a portent of unspeakable things to come. With a deep breath, she pressed on, the echo of her son's voice pulling her forward. What other horrors lay in wait? Would she be able to find him, or was the forest bent on trapping her forever? Branches clawed at Emily's face as she raced deeper into the forest, the oppressive darkness swallowing her every gasp. Each step felt heavy, her feet sinking into a fog that wrapped around her like icy fingers, pulling her down. Panic flooded her veins as she remembered Ben's south voice, so close, yet so far away. "Mommy! Come back!" His call echoed, twisting in the air. It ignited something within her, a flicker of hope, but mostly despair. What kind of place was this? The laughter, now hauntingly melodic, wrapped around her, teasing and promising horrors she couldn't bear to imagine. Suddenly, the ground beneath her quaked. Emily stumbled, barely managing to catch herself before crashing into the dirt. A low rumble reverberated through the trees, a sinister sound that felt alive, hungry. "Get up!" she hissed to herself, urgency clawing at her heart. With trembling hands, she pushed herself up, glancing back. Shadows danced in the periphery, whispering secrets that twisted her stomach. "You'll never escape," they crooned, voices harmonizing like a twisted song. Fighting against her instinct to flee, she closed her eyes for a moment, gripping the warmth of Ben's memory, his laugh, his cheeky grin. It grounded her, sharpened her focus. She had to find him, she had to get out. She lurched forward again, moving faster, dodging trees whose gnarled branches seemed eager to entrap her. Just ahead, the shadows formed a misty wall, pulsating and beckoning. Steeling herself, Emily plunged into it, the cold sensation enveloping her like icy tendrils. Inside, the darkness shifted as if alive, closing in around her, pressing tight. Then, a glimpse, a flash of familiar blue fabric. She rushed toward it, hope flaring in her chest. "Ben!" As she neared, the fabric transformed into a twisted amalgamation of the children's grinning faces, eyes wide and mocking. They swirled around her, their laughter ringing out in cruel, sharp tones. "You can't save him, Mommy. He's ours." "No! Not my son!" A visceral scream tore from her throat. Adrenaline surged, igniting her resolve. She fought through the sea of children, their hands grasping at her limbs. Raw strength, fueled by desperate love, propelled Emily forward. She needed an exit. She had to believe there was a way. Just as the laughter crescendoed, her foot struck something solid. A stone path laid bare a sudden lifeline amid the chaos. Without missing a beat, Emily sprinted down the path, the laughter giving chase. The air crackled with energy, biting and sharp. "You can't leave!" they shrieked, voices intertwining in a chorus of dread. Pulling herself onward, she fought to remain focused. Just ahead, she spotted a flicker of light, golden and inviting, shimmering like a beacon against the gloom. Hope surged anew, stronger now. "That's it, Ben!" But as she neared the light, the ground liquefied beneath her feet. She stumbled, and the path rippled like a dark sea. As she fell, shadows leapt toward her, their fingers not just grabbing but sinking into her, pulling her back toward the darkness. "Mommy! Help!" Ben's voice shattered her heart. The desperation radiated through the chill, and she kicked violently, fighting against the grasp of the shadows. "No! I won't let you take us!" With a final shove, the dark fingers tore away, and she lunged for the light, arms reaching, heart pounding. Then, just as she thought she was through, the forest cracked, and a figure appeared, a twisted version of Ben, pale and smiling, a hollow mockery. "You left me, Mommy! Now you'll play forever." Terror gripped her stomach in a vice. Emily felt the weight of despair pressing down. Was this the moment they consumed her? A heartbeat of silence stretched, and then everything erupted. The ground shook violently, the laughter wailing, a cacophony ushering in a suffocating night. Would she succumb to the shadows at the edge of her memories, or could she still find her way back to her real son? And then the ground opened wide. What awaited her beneath? Would it be salvation or her ultimate doom? Emily plummeted, the darkness swallowing her whole as the ground gaped wide beneath her. Time stretched, a cruel mockery, while shadows swirled and played like a macabre dance above her. She hit the ground with a bone-jarring thud, pain radiating through her limbs. Her breath came fast, panic bubbling anew as she scrambled to her feet and surveyed her surroundings. The air felt denser here. The light that had so tantalizingly promised hope flickered like a dying ember, casting long, jagged shadows. Emily moved cautiously, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm in her chest. The laughter faded, but the sense of being pursued lingered, a spine-chilling reminder that something was still hunting her. To the left, a figure stirred, a fleeting silhouette against the darkness. "Ben?" she called, her voice trembling as it chased the shadows. Silence answered, thick and heavy, like a drape over her soul. The familiar, comforting image of her son dashed away, chased by a creeping dread that made her skin crawl. Sweeping her gaze around, the distant outline of twisted trees and ragged branches painted a sinister backdrop. The trees loomed like gnarled hands, clutching at the thick fog crawling low on the ground. She dared to step forward. Each footfall echoed as though the forest breathed with her, hungry for her fear. Mommy? A soft whisper pierced the stillness, drawing her closer like a moth to a flame. Ben! Emily rushed towards the sound, her heart igniting with hope. But as she rounded a tree, it wasn't her son she found. Instead, another child stood there, eyes gray and dull, skin a ghostly white. It stared at her, unmoving, as though locked in a trance. Help me! A gasped voice choked. Emily hesitated. She could see the deformity, the way its mouth twisted into an unsettling grin. Doubt gnawed at her mind. You're not my Ben. Not anymore, it whispered, voice drifting like the fog. None of us are. You'll join soon. A shudder coursed through her, and she pivoted, fighting the urge to scream. The laughter had returned, a cruel chorus drifting through the trees, each note taunting her, echoing her despair. They knew where she was, they thrived on her fear. Ben, where are you? She shouted into the void. The name felt like a prayer, an incantation against the evil tightening around her. Just then, the ground beneath her began to tremble again. The earth pulsated and buckled, imitating her racing heart. Emily gripped a nearby tree to steady herself, feeling bark graze her palm, real, alive. Before she could catch her breath, a familiar figure emerged from the fog behind her. Mommy! It was Ben, or at least he looked like him. His smile was wide, but something was wrong, eyes too bright, laughter too cold. She stepped back, confusion melding with dread. Ben! Is it really you? Come play with us. He sang, voice lilting yet hollow. It's more fun here. The child she had seen before joined him, locking eyes on Emily, a grotesque duet of innocence and evil. They reached out, hands stretching towards her, fingers curling in an invitation that felt more like a threat. No! She cried, instinct kicking in as she turned to bolt, but the ground shifted. Mud pulled at her shoes, gripping tight. Each desperate stagger backward was met with a surge of darkness, faces and voices rising from the depths, whispering unintelligible threats, their blisters and gnarled features sickeningly harmless. Help us, join us! Desperation clawed at Emily. The forest sighed, shifting, the reality around her warping. She had to escape. With renewed resolve, she began to fight her way back through the thrumming shadows. The voices of children grew louder, echoing through the abyss. You can't leave, you're one of us now. Her breath quickened as she lunged, racing deeper into the suffocating fog. Time was fleeting. Emily could feel the thin threads of her sanity fraying, could sense the yawning chasm of despair threatening to engulf her whole. But before her stood a glimmer, another path through the trees, enticing and bright. She could see it shining like the sun, a beacon against the darkness that clung to her like a shroud. But dread wormed its way back into her heart. What if it was another trick? Would it lead her to freedom, or to an even darker fate? As she hesitated, the cacophony of laughter surged back around her, echoing her inner turmoil, each note sharp like a knife. The choice lay before her: step into the light, or remain lost in the shadows forever. What awaited Emily should she dare to leap forward? Would she find Ben, or would she cement her place in the darkness? The decision echoed in her mind, reverberating like the tortured cries of the lost children around her. Emily's heart raced, a drumroll of dread pleading with her to reconsider. She clenched her fists, torn between the vulnerability of hope and the crushing weight of despair. Mom! Please! The voice, now unmistakably Ben's, broke through the clamor around her, laced with urgency. It beckoned from the path, softer than the laughter, a thin lifeline. But as her feet began to move, the figure of her son shimmered, melding with the darkness that surrounded him. Don't listen to them, Mommy! They're lying! His plea sliced through the air, but the fabric of the forest seemed to shift, distorting the truth. Emily fought against the pull, stepping back from the light. The shadows writhed at her heels, regretful formerly human forms intermingling like twisted wishes for oblivion. They began to whisper again, a harsh chorus of temptation. Stay with us. You can't abandon us, join our play. Emily looked back. The child's expression, the one who once cried for help, had transformed into a vacuous smile, devoid of warmth. Fear twisted in her gut like a knife. Could she trust the flickering shadow that was Ben? Was it truly a way back to him, or another deceit woven from her pain? With a deep breath, she closed her eyes, trying to silence the haunting echoes. She pictured Ben's face, the way his eyes sparkled like summer stars, the warmth of his laughter. But then, a wave of inky despair crashed hard, and she stumbled. The gnarled branches overhead creaked, swaying as if warning her. The ground beneath her shifted again, now more lively and restless. Roots sprang to life, snaking around her ankles, pulling her down, dragging her back into the abyss. Join them! Become one of us, no! Emily screamed, wrenched from the terrible grip. She hurled herself toward the beckoning light, the pulse of energy striking something within her like a match against kindling. The laughter ceased for a moment, replaced by a suffocating silence. It felt like the calm before a storm, a brief sanctuary in the chaos. But the taste of fear remained sharp on her tongue, and sweat dripped down her brow, just as the darkness closed in again. With renewed determination, she launched herself toward the radiant glimmer. As she broke through the curtain of gloom, the light enveloped her, washing over her like warm water, restoring her resolve. But just as quickly as it came, the illumination flickered. Emily found herself standing at the edge of a clearing, the serenity mocking its surroundings. At its center lay a large, twisted tree, its trunk split wide open, revealing a gaping maw like a hungry mouth. "Mommy!" Ben's voice echoed once more, piercing the thick veil of sinister quiet. Time twisted, moments spinning into distorted memories. The laughter swelled again, bitter, cultivated, echoing messages of despair. She hesitated, fear pummeling her. From the edge of the clearing, she spotted shadows shifting, forms rising, its eyes glinting in the dim light. "Help us!" they called, pulling Emily toward the abyss that threatened to consume her spirit. She stood at the brink, the bait of hope flashing bright yet unsettling. What lay inside that hollow tree? Did it promise sanctuary or unleash a deeper nightmare? The shadows intensified, their whispers encircling her tightly. "Join us. Your place is here." Was this the path that led to Ben? Or a trap meant to devour her soul, bringing darkness closer than ever before? Her decision loomed, heavy with dread. But before she could follow through, the tree shuddered, releasing a low, ominous groan. The branches began to writhe. Something was waking within, something that wanted her to come closer. Would she find the truth by entering, or trap herself into a fate worse than she could imagine? A low growl reverberated from the depths of the towering tree. It was primal, like a warning, an echo of something ancient and hungry, tangled within the gnarled roots and branches. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. The warning clawed at her resolve, but the shadows beckoned, their whispers now coaxing in seductive tones. "Don't be afraid, come closer. We're waiting for you." Every fiber of her being screamed to turn away, yet the echoes of Ben's voice lingered in her ears, twisting the truth into something clawing and raw. "Mommy!" A desperate plea wrapped in her heart's darkest fears. Tears blurred her vision as she stepped closer to the maw of the tree. The darkness inside seemed to pulse, calling her name. The air grew heavy and thick. She could almost taste the sorrow and despair seeping from the shadows. "Mommy, it's safe in here!" Ben's voice echoed again. The smile attached to that sound twisted her stomach. But was it safe? Struggling to remember, she fought against the disjointed memories flooding her mind. Images of laughter played, interwoven with moments of sorrow. Instinctively, she reached for the edge of the tree's opening, the bark rough and uneven beneath her fingertips. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, morphing into twisted faces, mouths that opened wide in silent screams. They looked like children, all once lost but now twisted into something unrecognizable. Emily's heart thundered like a drum, pounding in her ears, echoing her growing dread. "Join us. Don't leave us." Their mouths whispered in unison, the words drenched in longing. "No," she retorted, turning away, feeling the heat of the light flicker like a dying flame. They surged forward, shadows weaving around her ankles, their icy grip tightening as if to drag her into the void of despair. "No! I'm coming, Ben! I'll find you!" She struggled against their grip, pulling back, trying to summon the strength within her. A murmur of anger rose with the wind, rustling the leaves like a swarm of flies, ready to break free. The grotesque figures danced at the edges of her sight, their cries mingling with the laughter of children long gone. But Ben's voice seemed to pierce through it all, cutting past doubt and fear, drowning out the others. "Mommy, please! I'll get lost if you don't come!" With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Emily tore away from the darkness. She spun on her heel, making a run for the light, her heart racing because she knew she couldn't face the shadows alone. They screamed behind her, their voices an orchestra of rage and despair, but she couldn't look back, not now. The clearing shifted, a dizzying spiral that left her breathless. The tree's contours seemed to claw at her mind, trying to suck her back into its clutches. The energy pulsed, and Emily felt desperation pinching her heart. Panic surged as she saw a glimmer of movement in the branches above. Was it a reflection? Or a warning? Emily hesitated just long enough to catch her breath, peering into the maw of the tree. Darkness roiled within, and she swore she saw glowing eyes staring back at her. The tree rattled again. The laughter grew louder, and Emily knew she was out of time. She had to decide, and fast. What if she chose wrong? Whatever lay ahead, she couldn't turn back now, couldn't allow the shadows to win. With one final breath, she sprinted forward, ready to confront the truth. What did the shadows want from her? Would she find her son, or was she destined to join the lost forever? As she dove into the gaping mouth of the tree, it screamed a sound like cracking glass, splintering the air. But then, the light flickered one last time and everything went dark. What awaited her in that empty void? Would she come face to face with her own greatest fear or find out the reason the shadows called? Emily tumbled into the abyss, swallowed by the consuming blackness. The chaos and cacophony she left behind faded, but that reassuring voice, always just beyond reach, echoed like a heartbeat in her mind. "Mommy! Help me!" She felt weightless, lost between dreams and nightmares, and as she fell, a pinprick of light began to emerge, glowing faintly in the darkness. It grew brighter, illuminating her path, wrapping her in warmth. She grasped onto it, desperate for something tangible, clinging to the sense of hope it offered. A chill wind swept through the void, tousling her hair, whispering words she couldn't comprehend. There was an undeniable presence surrounding her, thin and menacing, and just beneath it, the stench of despair lingered. The laughing souls were gone, but their echoes thrummed like a twisted lullaby, urging her to embrace the shadows. "Ben!" she shouted, conviction rising. "I'm coming for you." The light expanded rapidly, enveloping her, guiding her to the surface, crashing against invisible walls before finally spilling over like a tidal wave. She blinked, stumbling into a vast clearing illuminated by shimmering moonlight. The atmosphere buzzed, alive with energy. She looked around, trying to make sense of her situation. The twisted branches of the tree loomed at her back, a grotesque cautionary figure whispering with the voices of the lost. But the air felt different here, less suffocating. And then there he was. Emily gasped as she spotted Ben standing at the edge of the clearing, bathed in silver light. His smile was radiant and pure, untouched by darkness. "Mommy! Ben!" she cried, racing toward him, her heart soaring. The distance shrank between them like a miracle unfolding, and she reached out, arms wide, expecting the familiar warmth of his embrace. But Ben took a step back. "Mommy, don't!" he warned, his tones suddenly frantic. "It's not safe." The warmth of joy froze, replaced by a creeping dread that settled like ice in her chest. "What do you mean?" Confusion and desperation twisted in her voice. The shadows lurked in the periphery, and she could feel them stirring again, their hunger intensifying, their laughter dimming to an ominous murmur. "They'll take you too. You can't stay here." His eyes widened, fear dancing across his small features. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. "Ben, listen to me. We have to get out of here, together." "No!" he cried, the sentiment both desperate and wary. "You don't understand. You can't escape, Mom." Those words struck her like lightning, freezing her heart in its rhythm. Fear surged anew, pounding through her veins. The shadows thrummed louder. She glanced back at the tree, at its twisted branches, and then to Ben, whose familiar form began to flicker. "What have they done to you?" Desperation clawed at her throat. "Please come with me." But Ben was shaking his head now, his small fingers gripping his arms as though he were in pain. "Mommy, you promised you wouldn't leave me." They were his words, but turned against her like venom. She tried to swallow, but her throat constricted. "No! You're not lost. I'm here. We can fight this." The shadows coiled around them, drawn to her mounting fear, a tumultuous storm of darkness and chaos. "No more games!" She screamed into the void, an affirmation of her fight. "I'm scared," Ben whispered, tears shimmering in his eyes, and for a moment, his innocent visage felt all too real. "Then let us go together. Fight with me." In that moment, the darkness stirred fiercely, and figures slipped between shadows, grasping at her, their cold fingers brushing her skin. Emily felt the shadows tugging against her will, luring her to join their twisted dance of despair. "Mommy!" Ben's plea pulled her from the abyss, and sudden realization struck her hard. She knew what she had to do. The answer lay in the depth of her heart. Just then, she stepped forward, tears blurring her vision yet sharpening her spirit. "I will not abandon you again. We are more powerful than this darkness." "Mommy!" Ben shouted, voice merged with the cacophony, echoing against the curse of the laughter. "The shadows, they're trying to trick you." "No!" she cried out defiantly, grasping at the love in her heart that had kept her fighting. "I refuse to let you take us." With a final surge of resolve, she pushed through the suffocating grip of shadows, her heart swelling with the power of hope and belief. The wind howled, screaming like a wounded beast, but she stood firm. The light expanded once more, illuminating the darkened landscape, forcing the shadows to shriek and writhe. "We are together! Nothing can take that away!" And then, just as the darkness surged toward her with a final desperate cry, she felt it in her bones, the connection between her and Ben tightening like an unbreakable bond. The swirling shadows began to dissipate, and the laughter pressed back, retreating from the radiant light that enveloped them. Ben's face shone through the darkness, clear and pure, and they were no longer separate, they stood as one. "Mommy!" he cried. "We did it!" With one final push, they broke free, the tree collapsing behind them like a dream unraveling. Light flooded the clearing, spilling warmth and strength like a beacon. The sounds of laughter were swallowed by the dawn, leaving behind a hushed reverence, an echo of the shadows that could never touch them again. Emily turned to Ben, her heart swelling with an overwhelming sense of love. "We did it," she whispered, bending down to wrap her arms around him, holding him tightly. In that moment, the oppressive night truly lifted. "And we'll always fight for each other," she promised, relief sweeping over her like a gentle tide. With Ben at her side, she walked into the light, a path unfolding before them, bright and hopeful. Finally, they had escaped the shadows, and together, they would face whatever came next, unbreakable, together at last. Now, if you enjoyed this conclusion to Emily and Ben's heart-pounding journey, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let everyone discover this thrilling story. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the twisted tale. Your voice matters, and true fans know the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.